I feel like we've been connecting more of late, which feels really good to my world. I don't know how it feels to you, but I'm excited.
It feels good because I feel very sad when I don't get to see your face or hear your voice on a regular basis.
I know. Thank God for WhatsApp, right? Where would we
Thank
be without it?
thank God for WhatsApp. And I am very excited because we have Jenny Lincoln here, who we get to have a fun, juicy conversation with, and who I had the honor of meeting this past year in
Oh,
2023 for a speak event. She came to New York City and gave a talk, and it was really wonderful, and it was really wonderful to get to know her. And
Oh,
so I feel so privileged that we get to have you again, Jenny, and
yeah.
that we get to have a fun conversation with you about a bunch of juicy things around leadership and life and what's going on in your
mm.
world. So I'm going to hand over this baton to you, Joseph Bennett, so you
Oh,
can do the introduction.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Jenny,
unless there's other things you
Jenny.
want to talk about.
No, no, I got it. Because Jenny Lincoln, she is that magical unicorn of speakers who could chat about paint drying and you suddenly want to renovate your entire freaking house. She is vulnerable yet tough, charming but no nonsense. She is a story weaving sorceress with a knack for nudging you into action. I'm repeating that. She is a story weaving sorceress with a knack for nudging you into action.
Hmm.
Wow. Her talks are lightning bolts to your heart and soul. She's got the mojo to lift your conference from meh. Can we get a meh?
Meh.
Meh to magnificent. Her secret sauce is serving up the truth with a side of love and a sprinkle of grace, holding authority and gentleness in perfect balance. She's that wise nomadic sage with over 30 years in the corporate trenches, ugh, and now diving headfirst
Mm.
into life's biggest quandaries with the zest of a rebel heart. She's a visionary behind HUMNAV, the human navigation practice. Think of it as your inner GPS with all the things leadership. It's designed to support leaders who prioritize heart centered, intuitive, and truth driven leadership. Want a feedback loop that's more personal than your smartphone and knows your purpose path better than you do? That is HUMNAV.
Yes.
It's like getting into cheat codes for being more potent, productive, successful, and even more smiley on Monday mornings. Wow, wow,
Oh,
Woo,
wow.
I love it.
woohoo.
I love, love, love it.
Thank you for
Uh,
being part of this show. Go ahead, Meredith.
no, yeah, thank you for being a part of this show. And Jenny, tell us where in the world are you right now? Because one of the cool things that I love about you is that you're a nomad. So tell me more about that.
Woohoo. Well, I'm in Mexico right now, good old Mexico, in a place called Guanajuato, and hanging out with some local Mexicans, which is always fun. So if you hear the odd music in the background, or
Mm, mm,
lots of babies crying. Actually, they're not crying; they're happy. I don't know
mm,
why
Aw.
I said crying. They're just laughing all the time. And that's one of the things I love about my life, is that I get to choose where I live, which is usually second and third world countries, because they tend to
mm.
be, I find personally, a little more heart centered, a little more relaxed, and I don't know, just a little more present, and you know, enjoying and experiencing life.
So I'm going to
Mm.
go out on a limb here, Jenny, and assume that you have given yourself permission to leave your homeland, because we can tell by that beautiful accent you are not Mexicana, right?
No, no,
So
senor.
tell us a little bit about how it was to leave your homeland and what your family's reaction to that was, because I also left my homeland. We all have those stories of our journeys. Tell us about yours.
Well, yes, the most liberating experience of my life was when I packed up my home and I gave away most of my possessions, put some things into storage, which I then gave away later.
Mm.
So I should have just given it all away straight away.
Mhm.
Um, but my goodness, the liberation of, one of the biggest things about being a nomad is that you have, like, I travel with 10, maybe 20 kilos max. And that's all I own in the world now. So I deployed myself of all my assets and all my worldly possessions. So I have nothing to support apart from me living the life that I live each moment to moment. And it is so freeing, which is amazing. But I did have to, I wasn't fully truthful with my family, particularly my mother, because she's 95.
Mhm.
So I said that I was going traveling for 18 months, but I had no intention of coming back. So, but, you know, I pop back every year to see mum.
Oh, that's lovely. That's so beautiful. So tell me, what was that moment in time, that moment when you're like, I'm doing this? Like, what was that transformation, that transition?
After 30
Well,
years in corporate trenches,
Yeah,
right?
tell me more.
oh, well, I think they're two different stories. The leaving corporate trenches was I had just finished doing well, I was in the print media business in Australia for one of the big media cut houses down there, and online had just started. And so all what we call our rivers of gold, which were all the classifieds, I'm not sure what you call them in the US, but you know, real estate, motors, um, you know, and jobs, all those sorts of things used to be in our broadsheets. And when online came along, of course, you get seek.com and jobsandmotors.com, and all these things started popping up all over the place, and they totally cannibalized our business. And as a result, the leadership team decided that we would rip $50 million out of our cost line. And so yours truly was given that job. And so I ended up having to stack 350 of our editorial and pre and post editing, and make all sorts of really, you know, just really damaging cuts to our business, and to the point that you know, I ended up with two bodyguards because I had death threats from the editorial unions. And so after that, I thought, oh, I really don't like what I'm doing. Thank you, university. Really made me wake up. And so I took some time out, and then I kind of woke up and realized that there was just, you know, my heart was empty. I'd ticked all the boxes mentally. You know, I was a successful, powerful, probably very egoic businesswoman back in those days. But I just, you know, I felt empty, and I just thought, is this what life's all about? No,
Yeah.
there's got to be something more. So I decided, so I resigned without anything to do and became an unemployed beach bum for a while, pretended to be a consultant and took, you know, the occasional contract. But and then the gnarly thing was, after that, I fell into like a 2 to 3 year depression, which was really, really awful at the time for me and my partner. But what I realized in hindsight, my depression was actually, I call it my deep depression deliverance. When I realized the process, it took me from that really egoic, hard, power hungry, money motivated woman who, you know, I'd walk into someone's office and they'd start crying because they thought they were going to get sacked or something, you know, and you know, it's awful to own that persona, let alone project that persona, you know, and create those feelings within someone. And so my depression was actually a magical, well, it wasn't magical, it was a major metamorphosis where it broke down my whole identity, which at that time was based on what I did, you know, and what I had. So it was in terms of the be, do, have model, it was the having and the doing. And then 3 years later, when I came out of what I call the cocoon room after having a really uncomfortable mush moment, you know, how everyone talks about the caterpillar going to the butterfly. No one talks about it turning to a pile of stinking green goo. You know, we too have these mush moments where we lose our form, but that's only so that we can reform and rebirth in a totally different form. And so when I came out of that process, I was heart-based and intuitive, and my free spirit led me. And that's when I decided, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going traveling. I'm saying goodbye to all my attachments, and I need to discover really, really, really who I am and what I'm made of. So that's how I became nomadic.
That is almost the crux of what this podcast is, right, Meredith?
Yeah.
To look at where we are in our life and feeling, forgive me for putting words in your mouth, Jenny, but what I heard was feeling in that place of being stuck and living from our ego and going into depressive states, and then saying, I'm giving myself permission to change my life. And I have no idea what that's going to look like. You had no idea, right?
No. The most important thing was that I started to be really clear on which voices that were within that I wanted to listen to. And the most important thing I did was probably some work with a spiritual guru who got me out of that whole think feel cycle that we can get into. And I just, now I live from my heart space, and my mind comes in afterwards, and my most important asset within me, besides my heart and my love, is obviously my intuition. And I obey that religiously. And I don't say no to her. No way, man.
Oh, beautiful.
We are glad your intuition led you to this podcast. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. So it's, I love the vibe that you guys are emitting and everything that you stand for and talk about in this, because it isn't about waiting for an invitation.
No, it really isn't. I'm curious. Tell me a little bit about when you started going off nomadic. What did that feel like? Was it uncomfortable? Was it like, I found my zone of brilliance? Like, this is easy peasy? Like, I would imagine, like, tell me what that journey was at the very beginning for you.
It was just adventure. It was like I closed the door on responsibility, and I actually ended up with a new definition of responsibility when I was sitting on some lovely island in Thailand. And I thought to myself, responsibility, isn't it great not to have it anymore? Because I always felt like it was a burden. When you go to the gym and you're lifting heavy weights and it's like, and you just feel like you fall backwards and you're pinned to the ground by this bloody huge whopping weight. And I was laying there and I thought to myself, the word responsibility is made up of two words: responsibility. So really, it's my ability to respond in the moment. So that means I don't have to carry the burden. And my ability to respond in the moment is all about agility. So using the same gym analogy, instead of standing there trying to push up all these bloody big heavy weights, it's about doing reps. I can, it's a lighter rep response in the moment. And once I had that reframe in my head, I thought, hey, wow, that really works for me. And so I kind of live and breathe by that now. I never carry responsibility. It's always like, how am I going to respond in the moment? And being a nomad, because you every day is different. Every day you're in your courage zone. That's how you live. You have to live in the present moment, because nothing goes to plan. There is always surprise and delight and disappointment.
Thank
you for that. It is funny because last month we had Casey Underwood on our show, Meredith, and she also used the analogy of going to the gym and lifting weights, right?
She did
up that courage, right?
Except I would say that it seems like Jenny has a little bit more experience in the gym than Cassie did, because Cassie's like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I've never been in a gym. I've never even worked out with weights.
Do you think that if I lifted 5 pounds, that would make? She's like, I don't even know. So yeah, Jenny's like, I'm lifting those heavy weights, and she's climbing a barbell.
Yeah. Well, my ex-boxing trainer would be proud.
I love it. So Jenny, tell us where are you now? What are you doing? How are you of service to other people? Because I know that you talk a lot about leadership. Can you talk to us and our audience a little bit about that? And your speaking engagements too. That was a lot, I know.
Okay, well, you know what? Just before I jumped on with you guys, I hit the submit button on my first ever TEDx application.
What? Yay. All right, everybody right now put big energy out in the world. Big, big energy. That's
Yes.
awesome. That's
Yes.
very cool.
TEDx Yuri, you want me.
Say the
Yes,
last
you
word
do.
again. Yuri? What city is that?
Oh, I lost your sound, Jenny.
I can't hear you. Hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe if you
Am I back?
disengage
Oh,
your
you're back.
yes.
You're back.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's Mexico.
It's all
Yeah, I
good. Don't
know.
worry
Yeah.
about it.
So you said
Obvi-
TEDx Yuri, but I don't know what city Yuri is.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Got it.
Oh, I love it. So you'll be closer to me.
Yes.
Yes,
And
yes,
further
yes,
away from me.
yes.
And
So-
further away from Joseph.
But you know what? I bounce between the two of you.
Mhm.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love
New
it.
York, Guanajuato. New York, Guanajuato. So
When you
I love
did your application for TEDx, let's dive into that for a moment.
Mhm.
Was there a bit of, oh, I need to give myself permission to do this? Or did it feel like just the next right thing for you to do in your career of being a speaker and leader?
Ooh, oh yeah, okay. So I've always wanted to do TEDx, but you know, I've kind of been terrified to tell you the truth, you know. There's an element of terror of it because it's to do with the scripted talks, right? I'm used to free flowing, and so when when I started to get onto big stages and started doing these scripted talks, and the first one I did on a live stage with you, Meredith, you know, at Speak Shelter, and it brought out some really old gnarly conditioning around the need for perfectionism, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And again, over the last 3 days, so I got the content of my talk written pretty, not, I don't want to say easily, like with fluidity. Okay, it flowed and it came together. It wasn't singing yet, but it's 2 months away, so I don't want it to sing yet. But then I had to script the 2-minute audition video. Holy moly, the last 3 days have just been an absolute, talk about giving yourself permission. I was in the friggin' fight of my life with perfectionism, with expectation, fighting the process, you know, accusing myself of taking too long and not giving myself permission for one, this is a brand new process for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
2, the topic that I'm talking about is about the bias of extroverts over introverts and the fact that we have all this untapped potential on the table because our introverts are being benchmarked against extrovert behavior. So they're kind of deemed and misjudged and misunderstood. So when they retreat and withdraw, it's assumed they're not coping, but all their creative and innovative process happens within, whereas extroverts tend to create and innovate from external sources, right? So there's just this big misunderstanding and this big bias, even on all the research. It's quite incredible. So the whole thing needs to be flipped on the head. And so I kind of thought, oh, yep, I like disruption. So I'm going to have me some of that. But it was all new content for me as well. So new process, new content where I hadn't marinated and paddled around in it enough for the sound bites to come up and, you know, for it to be fully embodied. And so here am I over the last 3 days, you know, Madam Lash, whip, whip, whip. And in tears of truth last night, And I thought to myself, you know, I just have to give myself permission to allow this process to unfold. And, you know, I'm the sage on the stage, and you don't freaking write that stuff overnight. It comes from a soulful cellular level, and you got to sit in it.
You do. To put in it, you have to sit in it, put in the reps, own it. Now you know what it feels like to be an actor when they're handed a script and they got to make it their own. Yeah, but you got to choose the topic. You got to choose the subject, and you get to be in this place of service, which is just so beautiful. So I applaud you for that, because
thank you.
You're putting in those reps, and it is about process, and we forget about that piece of it, because we are inundated on a daily basis with seeing people who are in a place of polish. We don't see the in between. We don't see how many hours, years, and days that went into that final piece that's presented to us. So I applaud you, and keep digging in. I love it. Thank you.
You know what I'm noticing, Meredith, and forgive me, Jenny, for if I'm interrupting you. I'm noticing the process of Jenny's messiness, and that's where a lot of us get stuck, right? We back up, or we fall down, or we go to bed and we say, this is too hard. It's easy for everybody else, right? The Jenny Lincolns of the world, we see her audition and she looks great. It must not have been messy for the other people. But I'm so appreciative of this platform and of your honesty and your vulnerability, Jenny, and saying it was a shit show the last 3 days or longer, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, can I build on that?
Yes.
Do anything you want.
I love that gem, the place of polish, because we all like to show up polished, don't we? We all like to go, nailed it. It feels so good. But you know what also feels good is when you fumble and stumble and you fall on your face, and then you pick yourself up and you land the ending. And I have a talk that I'm going to promote very heavily towards people, because in that I stumble and fall twice, very messily, right? The first one, I'm in ego, right? So I stop, I apologize to a live audience of 150 people, and then I start again, but I'm still in my head and I'm still in ego. And so then I stumble again. And then when that happens, I just close my eyes, and whenever I get into a sticky spot, I just open my heart space and go, I am love, I am love, I am love. And I just open up and I think, what's the worst thing that can happen? And so I was actually talking about in this talk about the software upgrades of your mind, like getting through, letting go of limiting beliefs. So after my second falter and fall, I went, love it, when stuff happens live, what I'm talking about, you are witnessing right here, right now. And then I just laughed, right? And then after that, absolutely nailed finish. So to me, and you know what was the intention that I set for the 2 weeks leading up to that, is that I want to give the most impactful talk I could give. And it wasn't about coming from the place of polish. There were plenty of people that did that. I did the human messiness, stayed in it, and then freaking got up.
I love that so much. Well, you know, the one thing I've learned is that the most honest moments, those are some of the most honest moments. And those are the moments that really the audience perks up, because they go, this isn't scripted. This isn't polished. This is really what's happening right now in time and space. We're all in this together. And even I've seen actors do it where they go up, they mid monologue, they'll forget their lines, and it's riveting. It's actually quite beautiful to watch. So it might feel messy to the person who's experiencing it, but for the rest of us, sometimes it's like, thank you for showing your humanness, that we are all beautifully imperfect.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, if we can offer a redefinition, and I'm not sure I know how to articulate this in words, but words are overrated anyway, because they're only 7% of meaning, and yet we bloody react to them so badly. Often. We're so overreactive. It's kind of funny. But now, look, there you've got to love it. I've just lost my train of thought. So you're going to have to chime in now, because it just went out the window.
No worries. It happens to the best of us, as I point to myself. We were talking about being in that messy middle, allowing ourselves to show our humanness, not being perfect or polished.
Oh, yes, that's right. I think the perfection. So it was, that moment for me was excruciating, absolutely excruciating. I was so self-conscious. I was experiencing disappointment, relief, all that sort of thing. But there was perfection, and the perfection was in the messiness. It was in the fact that people saw truth. And so I would like to offer a reframe that perfection isn't polish, it's truth.
Thank you.
It's what everyone labels as authenticity, but there's a lot of authenticity that's cosmetic
or inauthentic.
Well, it's so funny because I'm a public speaking coach, and I oftentimes will hear people say, I believe in practice. I believe in putting in the reps. But when I hear people say that phrase, practice makes perfect, every cell in my body cringes. It just does, because that is such a harmful message, I believe, to put out into the world. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to speak from the heart, as you've mentioned several times. What is that?
Absolutely. And I always like to adjust that statement, and I say practice makes permanent, because it's all about hardwiring. It's all about the neuro connections, and and the muscle memory, the anchoring, the embodiment. And so I'm with you 100, 2000% on that one. That's an hallelujah moment for me.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Meredith, you and I read the book Limitless by Jim Quick, and his quote is, practice makes progress. And I like that as well. But I'm also going to piggyback and steal from Jenny Lincoln that it, helps us embody what it is, the message that we're putting out there. But you said something that I didn't understand, and I'm going to assume that one of our listeners may not have understood as well. Words are 7% of the experience. Tell us more about that, my love.
Oh, okay. So this comes from my body language days. I used to teach body language to the federal police and prison guards up in the United Arab Emirates.
Of course you did. Why?
I know. I was just going to say the same. Of course you did, Jenny. Of course you did. Yes. Continue.
And so we used to teach lie detection and stuff like that too. So I knew a little bit about body language, and there's a common model out there that about how we receive our meaning, and meaning comes from there's a lovely little pie chart, and 7% comes from words, from our vocal words. And then I think it's something like I probably won't get the math right on this, which is really embarrassing since I used to be a chartered accountant. But around about 33% or something comes from tone, and then the rest comes from body language. But I tend to lump tone is actually, when you teach body language, it's tonal is a part of your body language. So it's 7% comes from words, 93% comes from body language. And yet we see words as a red flag, red flag to a bull. Don't you use that word on me. And what happens is that we have feelings and emotions that are tethered and anchored into the words. And that's that whole think, feel response or cycle that we can get into. And that happens at a mental level. Whereas, when you live from your heart space and you're anchored in your heart space, people can say all sorts of stuff and you can feel through it. You feel underneath all the layers. It's like the submerged part of the iceberg rather than the top little bit, which is the words that are being spat or supposedly lovingly said to you, and you feel the intent, and all of that is done. I mean, to me, it's an energetic exchange, but obviously when you're first starting out, it's visual, it's audio, it's all the different senses. But eventually when you become more practiced at it, then it's just the whole thing is just a vibe that is like a beautiful melody, but you can sort of feel all the different notes, a bit like jazz. It can sometimes feel, off center and whatever, but you feel all the different instruments. Does that make sense?
It does. It really does.
And am I allowed to ask you about one word? Given
Yes.
that it's only 7% of meaning, can I ask you about it?
Absolutely. Go for it.
HUMNAV.
You've got permission.
HUMNAV. Human navigation.
Okay. HUMNAV.
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 HUMNAV. Oh, I got.
Okay. So yeah, I am. I'm very much into sound healing. So I kind of HUMNAV is a play on human navigation. Obviously, the first half of both those words.
Yes.
And what I want to teach people or demonstrate to people is that we have this amazing, sophisticated human technology that is within us. And when you tap into everything, when you realize this, everything is feedback, everything is support. It may be in an excruciating form, like I had in that talk, or it could be part of a beautiful surprise and delight, or joy or whatever. I mean, and so the elements of that are, we're more than just our minds. If we just believe we're our minds, we're in monoland. We're actually multi-dimensional beings. And so we have at a minimum 3 intelligence centers. We've got our hearts, we've got our minds, which is very much the command center, like the ops room. And then we have our heart, which is our harmonizer, and it is our major energy source, right? It's this little puppy keeps us going. And if we had to, if we were responsible for keeping it going, we'd all be dead. So, it is a wonderful harmonizer. It's a wonderful energy source. And then we have our intuition, which is our real inner GPS. That's our true north. Well, that shows us our true north. And I think, unfortunately, lots of people are focusing very much on the mindset. And I'm always talking about heart space, because heart space, the mind can't recalibrate the mind. It's like in any piece of equipment, it can't equilibrate itself. It's actually got to be recalibrated from outside of itself. And it's the same with our minds. So our hearts can reharmonize it through energy and emotion and feelings. And that's the other aspect of HUMNAV, is that our emotions are like little email packages. And so, emotions are energy and motion. That's why they're called emotions, energy and motion. And so we tend to get, we're a little biased about our emotions. We're a little addicted to positive over negative. But I like to offer the reframe of treble and bass. Like, do you have a preference over treble and bass? No, you want them together, don't you? You want them harmonized. And that's the same with positive and negative. But us humans, it's a bit like the perfection. We just want the positive stuff, we just want our dessert. We don't want to eat our vegetables. So HUMNAV is about reframing and reteaching that everything you need is within you. And if you are open to unpacking the emotional emails that are delivered, because every emotion has a message. And if you want to really be the director or author of your life, then you need to start reading your emails, all of them, all your emotional emails, not just the positive ones. Because if you get rid of the negative ones, you're deleting half of the feedback loop. And so guess what? You just got to paddle around in one direction until eventually you kind of slapped in the face and you wake up and you go, oh, okay, I am going to read those emails now.
I read somewhere, and I can't remember where it is, so maybe you know this, but I read that it only takes 90 seconds. If you're feeling a really strong emotion, like maybe it's like anger, for example, that you would sit with that. If you just allow it to, like, the mail has come, I'm just going to read it. That whole process, if you allow it, takes 90 seconds to move through your body. But
Max.
but we close it down, we shut it down, and then we don't feel it, so it doesn't go away. It just it starts to grow. It's like the mailbox, it starts to get full.
Totally. So you're absolutely right. It's all about impulse control. So when you have an emotional response and the chemicals are dropped into your bloodstream, they last between 6 and 90 seconds, right? But what happens is, through the suppression of, I'm not opening that email, I'm not going to my mailbox, what happens is that because you're focusing on the not, it keeps looping you back in. So every time you think about not thinking about it, you're actually re-injecting that chemical, that emotion, and hence that chemical again. Now, the same happens of when you go into it and you're overly activated, triggered, or reactive. And so what happens is, when you keep the association of, can I pick an emotion, someone, pick a gnarly emotion.
Jealousy.
Go for it. Jealousy. Oh, yeah, that's a gnarly one. So we have a habit of rerunning, like actors. Actors and actresses, they must rerun stuff in all over and over again, because you have to with a script anyway, don't you? Learning. But we all have that little aspect, or that job description part in our humanness, in that we run reruns, So you're at a party, you're with your partner, someone's, I don't know, just emitting a kind of energy that is making you feel a little uncomfortable. And maybe you're going through a little phase of where you're not feeling as close and intimate as you normally do, and you get jealous, right? And so what happens is, you can't get that out of your mind. So every time you think of that situation, that chemical is re-dropped in. So it goes for the full 90 seconds, because you're pretty fully imploded with what's going on, right? And just as it could actually dilute and flush out of your system, that whole thought just reruns in your mind again, and you see that person lean into that other person, you feel that vibe, and so another injection goes into the bloodstream, and then it's just starting to wear off, and then you think about it again, and another one. So what happens is that we keep extending the chemical reaction because we keep reliving the experience.
Oh, we can't hear you there, Joseph.
So my question to you, as we begin to wrap up this gorgeous episode, thank you, Jenny Lincoln, is, our listeners are at home, and imagine they might be sitting at the kitchen table drinking a nice cup of tea like you are, and they are loving all the words and the meaning that you are bringing forward, but they're not sure that next one thing to do, that one step in their human navigation or in their rewirement or connecting to their heart. Can you give us, and I'm putting myself there at the kitchen table drinking tea with our listeners, can you give us one micro movement that we can put into action based on your work and your leadership? What do you got for us, sweetheart?
Oh, I love the way you say that. That makes me tingle. Am I allowed to say that?
You're allowed to say anything, dude. Yeah, of course.
Spirit tingles, of course. Well, it has to be heart-centered. you know,
Okay.
because to me, that's the start of it all. So you're sitting at the table with your cup of tea, your coffee, or your smoothie, or whatever you have. And I think we spend too much of our lives in our minds. So, what I would encourage you to do is to um, drop into your heart space. And the way you do that is to shift your focus to your heart center, right? And I think what's really nice is to use your physiology to activate this for us, because our minds can be such masters and mistresses. You know, they have a whip, and, you know, we really are usually in the control by our minds. So, what you want to do is use your physical body to open up your heart space, right? Because when you do that, you're telling your nervous system that you are relaxed and that you're open and everything is good. Okay. It's a bit like when you're training back at the trainer and they say in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you're sucking air through your mouth, you're telling your nervous system that you are struggling. If you go in through your nose and out through your mouth, you are telling your system that you're more in control. And so it you know, comes down. So it's the same. If you want to open up your heart space, you put your shoulders back and your head up. So you're opening up all your major organs, your throat and your heart. And so that tells your nervous system you are not under threat. You are safe. And so I always shoulders back and down, lift my head, and then I just place all my focus into my heart space. And then I smile at myself and I say, I love you, Jen. I know it sounds corny.
No,
but
it doesn't. I love it.
It's really nice. And the smile is so important because smiling is contagious. And sometimes we just need that contagion for ourselves. So I'm forever smiling at myself. And I think people think that I'm a bit loopy, but hey, that's okay.
Let them. I say let them. And I'm a big fan of, if it's corny, the cornier the better, because we need more corn, not that kind of corn, but you know, the good corn in our
Come
lives.
to Mexico.
That was a
Come to
corny thing
Mexico.
to say.
I will. I'm going to come to
May
Mexico.
May I add to your beautiful prescription
Please.
of dropping into our heart space? So what I heard you say was dropping the shoulders, raising the head, feeling vulnerable, smiling, breathing. And what I would like to add to it is just a little tapping on the thalamus right here,
Yeah,
like really
absolutely.
tapping into the heart space, because that tells our body that's where the focus is.
Totally.
I'm just coming from here. I'm just
love it.
Yeah.
Jenny Lincoln, it has been such a delight to have this conversation with you. And
Thank you.
before we say goodbye, how can people find you?
Oh, well, look, I've jumped over to LinkedIn now. So I'd love for people to come over there, connect on LinkedIn, follow. And, you know, I'm just starting a new LinkedIn newsletter called The Human Highlighted, and it's all about our human messiness.
Yay!
So it gives you permission to do a lot of things. So I'd love for people to jump over there.
Okay.
Listeners, that is Jenny, the typical spelling Jenny, and Lincoln, just like the president, Lincoln.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks
Jenny.
so much. Lots of love.
Thank you for being here, listener. We will see you soon.